Good evening and welcome to a Supreme Commander replay review. I will have to keep my voice down a little bit because my roommates are sleeping next door, but I'll boost the video volume so you should be able to hear everything. This replay was sent to me by TantrumDesire. Most of you probably know him from Discord or the YouTube live chat as Dror, his other name. And he's playing against radijsdude, who seems to be some Dutch vegetable. He's going Siren versus UEF on Canis River. And Canis River is a very nice map because I feel like even in the high level range there's no clear meta. I've seen a lot of builds here. So for example, Matt Mozart's dual land Hydro Rush, which is covered in my exotic build orders video, is working here. So you can just take this Badlands build and apply it to Canis River, and you're going to get the same competitive timing third air and the land-based production. So very nice build, I feel. And you can also go for an Upfred Rise build. This little forest, typically underestimated, doesn't look like much, doesn't look like it's gonna give you a lot of power, but it's actually decent. You can go for an assisted second air Jester first, and if you use the Jester well, that's going to be a very strong opening. Now Turin has shown that there's a 8 to 9 pigeon assisted second air ghetto build, basically his Williamson's Bridge build with a few modifications to Canis River. But this is also working if you're into cheese and risky strategies. And I believe it's Low who pulled off some really fast pillar timing on this map. So lots of options here. I'm a bit puzzled. TantrumDesire is like, he doesn't seem to have built like a sandbox to build order he's using. It's a land heavy build order. That's not necessarily bad, but like there's going to be a lack of air scouting. But in the current meta, land is very strong compared to air, so might as well do it. But there's two things really puzzling about it. First is the Hydro is being prioritized because the first NG is going there, but it's just one NG. So the Hydro build time for one NG is 1 minute 20 seconds, and that is way too long. So if you really want to prioritize the Hydro and send the first NG there, you would also want to send the second NG there. And only if the Hydro is at the end of a long expansion route and it's, you could say, not so important in the first place, then you would build it with a single NG and not send two NGs there. But what I'm seeing here doesn't make much sense. Unit number 3 was a tank. It's a very early tank, probably meant to intercept enemy light assault bots. There was no light assault bot, and I feel like if you want to intercept light assault bot, you might as well use your own light assault bot, because UEF light assault bots are stronger than Siren light assault bots, and they should kill them with a bit of micro, so that shouldn't be a problem. This tank is a bit odd. This is like a Skyrim guard. Like you press control, enter sneak mode, and you're invisible to them. And this is like not even caring about the Mantis anymore. So okay, I'm pausing this here actually to talk about this a little longer. So third tank, way too early to protect just one NG, building the Hydro. If it was two NGs and there was like a certain light assault bot coming, I'd say maybe, but light assault bot would have been the better protection of the two NGs, because nobody really goes first Mantis against the enemy Hydro. That's just, the Mantis travel time is way too high and the build time is way too high to pay back its own cost. So this is super risky to go first Mantis, and that's why you would never go third tank to protect the Hydro. I think you'd go for a later tank after 3 or 4 NGs, but not after 2. And this tank let the Mantis slip through. It was out of position, way too far in front. So apparently Dror was like, okay, he's not attacking, that's why I can attack and secure the next expansion or whatever. And it ran out of the way exactly at the timing when the enemy Mantis came. It was on the radar for a short time, but Dror didn't react, didn't move this back to protect the NG. And the Mantis went here. And I don't know if Dror didn't move the tank over this little passage to protect this NG because he didn't know it was possible, or because he thought that this tank would be enough to protect this NG against the Mantis. But obviously it's not. The tank was out of position again. The Mantis was a bit too fast, ran past the tank, certainly did take some damage, but it's gonna finish off the NG. And the NG tried to build a factory to block the fire of the Mantis, and that was certainly like it's actually a pro level reaction to use buildings to block the shots, but he stopped building it too fast, and you could see he was trying to rebuild it again for a short moment, but it's just it didn't work. So I think Dror was kind of overestimating his own reaction speed and underestimating the enemy mobility. So what Dror should have done is just kept building the factory or move the second tank to support against the Mantis in this situation. Or ideally just not let the first tank run off, but keep it at the NG. So at the start there was a mass stall because there was one NG building a pigeon here that wasn't needed, and it wasn't reclaiming instead of building the pigeon. Should have been reclaiming in the riverbed. So the large rock is gone, but there's lots of small rocks still available. And now Dror is not really increasing the scale of his setup. So this is when Dror needs to add extra factories, ideally one air factory at least, and several land factories. There's just one NG building the land factory, and that's why he's overflowing mass. So pausing it again for a second because there's multiple important things happening. Usually if you go for an early T2 mass extractor in any build, and like it's not specifically a build that's designed to get it and get it on top of all the other things it's already getting. So I'm saying like it's an average build and the mass extractor is extra. This would be like viable, but like usually like you get a T2 mass extractor when you have full mass bar and you don't know what else to do with the mass because you messed up elsewhere. And this is like a build power and power bottleneck. So basically like Dror screwed up, and this is why he could get a mass extractor now. And like the mass extractor is sort of an excuse to like make a bad build less bad, but it's still a bad build sort of, you know. And in this case, I'd upgrade a mass extractor because a -40 power stall is something one can easily correct by building one extra pigeon or deactivating the radar for a short time, or both, right? But ideally, you would try to like avoid having full resource bars in the first place, and just like build a few less early tanks, instead a few more early NGs, and the early NGs would assist in scaling up the production, and the later tanks would be in better places, and that's how you can like make use of the resources and add extra factories at this point. So this mass overflow is really bad. And the second thing that happened while I paused the game, I couldn't cover both at the same time, was these tanks. So there was one NG that tried to build this max, and killing this was good, but one tank would have been enough, and sending all tanks was an overreaction. So this bridge is the only passage over to Dror's side of the map, since there is no hover faction, there's no Aeon and no Seraphim, and because both are absent, there's not going to be T1 units that can cross the water. And when you know that, you want to have your tanks in this passage. And look at what Dror is doing, where he has his rally points. So this rally point in the middle of the map kind of doesn't make sense. You would want to send here, right? Because there's a choke point here. But if you send it here, this is pretty much free, right? And enemy can raid here. And here, it would be super obvious to just block this passage. You know, if you're really defensive, you block this passage, and you try to get this max maybe, but you don't go here in the first place. This would be like one way of playing the map maybe. Just try to go for like a diagonal split, sort of. Or like almost diagonal, like this. So this could work. But like, Dror is always leaving a gap. There's a gap here, then there's going to be a gap formed here. So units can always go through, and this is a very important moment in this game. So Right now, 4 of Radij's tanks are shooting, and only 1 of Dror's tanks is shooting back, because like this is the only entrance, and you would want to go for a formation like this, so that every tank can cover the gap. But right now, only 1 tank can shoot back, and when this tank is dead, the next tank is going to fire. But in the end, Radij is always going to have multiple tanks shooting, while Dror is going to have 1 or 2 tanks shooting at a time, and not more. And these are already wounded, so these get popped fast. And 3 tanks against whatever 7 is going to be a quick battle. Some more right happening here. I don't think this is very important because Dror is taking care of it. He has another 10 seconds to react, maybe. Dror? Hello? Ah, lucky he didn't attack this, but let it on native firing. Okay, but like this is really gonna be a pattern in this game. Like the tanks are always gonna be at the worst possible formation. Look at this. 5 shooting at 1, 1 shooting back. Defeating detail. This is like the best possible demonstration of defeating detail. It's like Dror is trying to meme here, or like make a tutorial about how to lose against defeating detail. So that's something Dror really has to watch. Now more factories are being added. Right now it's 9 factories already. Okay, so let's count the mexes actually. It's 12 T1 mexes, and each T1 land factory consumes the mass of 2 T1 mexes. So Dror can operate 6 factories, and maybe let's say 7 or 8 if he's actively reclaiming a lot. But I feel like Dror is kind of ignoring most of the reclaim. He got the big rock, and since that he kind of didn't reclaim anything. There is like an entire army that died here, so this NG maybe should move here, reclaim this, later reclaim this. Maybe even 2 NGs going here, reclaiming both. Enemies you attacking, interesting. Yeah, but there's like so much reclaim untouched, and if Dror is really relying on getting all of his mass income from mass extractors, he could operate 6 to 7 factories. Certainly not 9, and he's getting even more. Another important detail is the very late air factory. So you would want to go, I think a factory number 4 is about the latest factory that should be air. Even in a balance where air is not very strong, you want to get air even if it's just for scouting. And you can like stop producing engineers on all land factories and make the NGs from the air factory if you don't need that much air, because the enemy has anti-air. Bombers deal a bit of damage but not terribly much, and fighters are not useful because the enemy is not in the air game or not very strong in the air game. Then the air factory can assist in the NG production. But making 9 land factories, or is it 8, is it 9? No, it's 9. 9 land factories before the first air factory is pretty suicidal, because you just can't go ahead and not scout your opponent in a ladder game for 10 minutes. It's not working. But I'm actually curious what radijsdude is doing. Oh, let's see. Okay, so he's spending twice as much mass as he has. Looks like he's... Yeah, he's also got 8 factories. He's got 6. Yeah, make it 7, whatever mexes. Yeah, let's make it 8 or 9, but still, like, 8 factories is something he can't afford, and if he keeps taking up mexes at the same time, and he's got idle engineers, which are like just 1 dead factory that's consuming resources but not adding anything to the setup, that's pretty bad. I don't think 4 NGs are needed here either. Like, even if he's reclaiming getting all of mass, 1 NG could reclaim this all. So the setup of radij is just very inefficient. He's kind of like ecoing way too much. So Dror can actually take his units, right click and kill radij, I think. Let's take a look. So yeah, Dror has twice as many units as Radijs. I think that's a pretty safe amount for right-clicking and killing. Looks like Dror is getting gun upgrade. Wow. Okay, I'm pausing it again because this is unreal. Look at this. This army should be positioned like this, because the entrance is here, and you want every tank to shoot at the enemy army and not just the tip of the formation while the tip is dying, and then the next tip is forming, which is also dying, and the next tip is forming, which is also dying against like a block that's pushing. And look at this. This should be in this formation. So all Dror needs to do to become way better at Supreme Commander is rotate his army 90 degrees. It is silly as fuck, I'm realizing that, but it makes such a huge difference. It's insane. Like, the only reason why Aeon T1 is so good is because of the increased range. And like, if I played Aeon and I placed my army like this, then my army would be even more paper, as it already is, not having any HP and so on. Like, the angle of the units just matters so much, because you're going to have very few units shooting at the enemy units and many enemy units returning fire. That's a really ideal defeat in detail, working against you pretty much. So looks like Dror decided he needs some radars. 3 radars here, another being built here. I think that's a bit over the top, considering he's like not spamming extra power for radars. At this point, like, some of the radars are quite redundant. He was power stalling during the gun upgrade. Could probably have deactivated some of these radars and could still deactivate some. So I'd argue that this is quite stationary. There's point defense here, and when this army moves up and there's Artie inside shooting the point defense, then it doesn't really matter if this radar detects it or this radar detects it, because this extra area is not worth 20 power. So this is not needed. Could be deactivated, and even and only if this radar dies, it can be reactivated pretty much. Now the radar over here, I guess if one gets radar over here, you don't need radar here, because it's just redundant, right? You don't need to spend extra power for just like this size area of extra coverage. Doesn't really matter. And yeah, one more thing. I see that Dror has, okay, I'm gonna like shift. Okay, two land scouts, right? So Dror has 2 land scouts. Let's take a look at the factory queues. So no land scouts in these. These are assisting. Yeah, he's not building land scouts anymore at all. So land scouts kind of replace T1 radar, because T1 radar costs like 150 mass or so. It's the radar cost itself and also the cost of the T1 power generator that's used to operate it. And that's quite expensive. A land scout is maybe 20 mass, or I'll actually check. So 10 mass even. So you can make 15 land scouts instead of 1 T1 radar. And that's just rounded, right? Because I'm too lazy to do the actual math. And I'm pretty sure that 10 land scouts are more useful than 1 extra radar, because land scouts tend to get overkilled. Units will shoot at them, even Artie will shoot at them, and the projectile will kill maybe 10 or 20 HP, but the projectile itself is way more damage than that, and your own tanks get like a virtual HP advantage. At the same time, the land scouts move with the army. It's very difficult to snipe all the land scouts and make the army blind, so adding some extra land scouts to the army is usually very good. So I really recommend including land scouts in any default composition. So all of these factories should have a low amount of land scouts in them, and maybe 1 land scout every 6 other units, or 1 land scout every 8 to 9 other units if you want to go for the low end. So there's differing opinions, but having 2 land scouts at minute 12 when there's like 100 units on the map is very low. I feel like Dror is using his army to shield his ACU in a sense. So the ACU is very tanky. The ACU should be the one that's tanking damage for the army, because you can't rebuild army easily, but you can recover ACU HP super easily. And that should be priority, keeping the army safe and just trading a bit of ACU HP. The ACU itself is healing, even if it's not doing anything, and at the same time the ACU is getting veterancy from tank kills. So ACU HP is not valuable in this game. As long as it's not 0, you are kind of indifferent about it. And if your opponent is lower rated than you want to make sure it's not less than 2,500, which is the amount for a draw. But until then, you can pretty much waste your ACU HP and keep your army alive in turn. That's going to be good. Veterancy becomes a liability over time as well, because if your opponent gets veterancy twice as fast as you, then they're going to have much more HP and a better heal rate for the entire game available to them. So yeah, the ACU should be ahead of the army. It's not the army that should be ahead of the ACU. And that's also like something that's quite constant that I'm observing. The ACU is moving slower than the army, so the ACU should always be way in front of the army. Of course not so far in front that the army cannot support it in time if there is danger. So if the ACU drops to low HP, you want to use the army to block the enemy ACU, make sure it can't walk towards your ACU and you can get out and heal. But usually the ACU is in front of the army and not the other way around. I don't really know why Dror is retreating here either. So Dror knows the ACU is here of the opponent. It's stealth, but he could still see it a second ago. And this is a very high density positioning. So there's going to be 30 tanks shooting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tanks, right? So 30 tanks are shooting at 10 tanks, which means Dror is winning super easily here. And he's got the HP advantage on the ACU, I believe. I think I saw that earlier. So 10,000, 13,000, right? So Dror can push on the left and he can also push on the right. But he's retreating on both sides for no reason. So this is, I don't know why he's so afraid, but he has the advantage on both sides and he should just right click and he could probably win the game. So unit positioning, a very important factor in this game. Like Dror always positioning his army in the worst possible way and always retreating at the worst possible moment. And that is something that's quite easy to fix, because most players have problems with build orders, they have problems with map control and raid and whatever, but in this case it's only unit positioning. This is something you can easily fix. So the air factory is online since a while, and looks like it's building a mix of fighters and scouts and bomber. I think I saw that the factory went bomber first. So when factory number 10 is your air factory, you don't want to go bomber first. Usually you want to have your air factory within like 4 or 5 factories the latest. In the current balance, that's acceptable. Traditionally you would go second air or third air, but now it's okay to have it later because air is not extremely strong and anti-air is quite good. But you would never build no air for 10 factories and when you finally have it open bomber first, because that's just guaranteed to throw air control away. Now Dror is super lucky that his enemy doesn't have air. He has an air factory, but I don't think that's actually building air. But that's just bad gameplay. That's not Dror outplaying his opponent. That's his opponent being a total potato and not using air, even though he could have done so for the entire game. Okay, so Dror power stalling. He's queuing up the T2 Pigeon. Yeah, so there are a few mistakes which are, like, I guess they're not super important, but they add up. So, for example, there's 2 TMDs, but there's nothing this could protect. So there's just one T2 land factory. Land factory could be TML, but only, like, Dror has scouting, so you can see if he has TML or not. There's no TML now, so maybe no use in rushing TMD. Or, like, it's not rush, but whatever. It's like, considering what Dror has, this TMD is a bit crippling, because he doesn't have a single T1 max upgrade to T2, which the TMD could be protecting. So the only thing this is protecting is the land factory right now. And for one land factory, you would never get 2 TMD, because one TMD kills one TML pretty much. So it's placed in front, that's very good. UEF TMD takes a long time to react, so you want to protect the building that's behind it and not the building that's right next to it. If the factory was here, then this PD was bad placement, but it's far in front, so it's fine. But what's not good is that this is prioritized for no reason, given that there's no TML, and there's two of them. You don't need two of them, really. Like, they're in the same place even, so why have two of them? About 80% of the range is overlapping, so that's just like no need for that. If the enemy had 3 TML or something, you could do this, but just randomly like this, it's super odd. You wouldn't do this. So the enemy ACU is operating here, and Dror's ACU is assisting some T2PD. So there's an NG building T2PD, and the ACU is assisting. So essentially, the enemy ACU is farming kills all this time, and Dror's ACU is idle. Because 2 T1 engineers could add the same build power to this NG as this ACU, but this ACU is a combat upgrade ACU, so it's much more valuable if it's fighting instead of assisting some random unit. Radijs now pushing, and it looks like there's kind of nothing to stop him. Radijs hasn't scouted in 18 minutes on a 5x5 kilometer map. It takes a special person to do that. I think he just doesn't care what his opponent has. The 10 idle engineers are kind of supporting this idea. Also the team D in the middle of the base, even though it should be on the edge, if there was any in the first place. 2 team D even. Yeah, like his setup is super odd and super inefficient. But Dror just threw his units away for the entire game by bad positioning and by letting his combat ACU idle while the enemy combat ACU was fighting it like entire time. 2 veterancy and 50 kills for Dror. Let's take a look at Radijs. 107 kills, full veterancy, so there's going to be loss of 2 units killed by this. And that's a major factor. Now there is an army in Dror's base. It's not even like focus fire, so it should be like focusing the pigeon. Yeah, this guy doesn't care, just parks the army in the base and waits until everything is dead. But like normally you would assume that you cannot kill everything, that's why you kill the most important targets first, and this is the pigeon. He finally focused it, took way too long, but yeah, looks like Dror is losing now. So pausing again just to explain, we had like 5 T1 tanks here, and Dror is sending 3 pillars and 5 T1 tanks and 1 RDA. It could be just 1 pillar and he would also win and deny this expansion. So kind of overreacted to small things, but it's mainly the unit positioning that lost this game. Always in this 90-degree angle, worst possible defeat in detail situation working against Dror, and having the combat ACU idle assisting random shit while the enemy combat ACU was killing tanks. So again, 110 kills, 50 kills. If Dror had 60 units now, he could stop this attack. So just that would have been fine. He could have done all the positioning mistakes and still won the game, but letting combat ACU idle, totally unforgiving. And that's how he lost. So for next time, Dror should take a closer look at his unit positioning and maybe rally the units into the choke points in the first place, because that's where the enemy is going to come from if they don't have a hover faction. Combat ACU should never be idle. And if the awareness is an issue, play the game either on 2 screens with the strategic overview on one of them, or make sure that you have a split screen mode enabled on a single screen, so that you give the commands on the left side and watch the map on the right side. It's not as pretty to play like this, but it gets the job done. Dangerously close to Dror actually, but yeah, Dror kind of got wrecked in this one. So let me think, anything else I could recommend to Dror? Yeah, maybe count the number of mixes and count the number of factories and see how much you can support. So you don't want to have 10 land factories if you only have mixes that support 7 land factories. Like, you would have to get a ton of reclaim, like all the reclaim on the map, to operate the extra factories. and you can't like get 10 factories and power spam and nexus and the ASU upgraded to gun on top of all that. So maybe spend less and focus more. Look what the map offers with your map control, and just try to go for some reasonable expenditure, not something that's completely overkill. But if you just like get better unit positioning and make sure that your ACU is not idle when it's combat upgraded, you should beat the opponent like radijsdude pretty easily, because he was just ecoing too much. Alright, thank you for watching, and good night.